What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with the first exotic quest guide for the final shape. And this is a pretty cool one, actually one I was pretty excited for because it was one of the exotics which wasn't really revealed before the final shape actually came out, and it is the Ergo Sum exotic sword. So this is a post-campaign reward for the final shape. We're going to cover exactly how you can get the weapon. There is a slightly lengthy exotic quest in order to actually pick this one up. Initially though, for what the thing actually does, it is an aggressive frame sword, as we can see right here, and it has wolf pack rounds in the intrinsic trait. Powered heavy attacks cause nearby sword wielders to emit tracking missiles with every attack. This does actually work, it's really neat. If other players in your fire team nearby are using any sword, your heavy attacks will grant them this sort of void wolf pack rounds, so that's really neat. But it also has Transcendent Duelist, which actually is the main component of the weapon, and it collects less ammo, but final blows with the weapon accelerate light and darkness mastery and deals increased damage while transcendent. Plus, defeating targets will actually lengthen transcendence. So when you're making kills with this weapon, you'll notice both of the bars for light and darkness on the transcendent or prismatic super are being filled pretty rapidly by the kills that we're making with the weapon. But then if you pop transcendence while you've got the weapon, making kills with it will actually feed energy back to the super, which will increase the amount of time that it runs for. So it's a very cool weapon. However, there's another component to this, which I'm actually editing the video again right now, because it turns out that this is a randomly rolled exotic weapon. So while I had wolf pack rounds on this thing, it's also possible to get Gathering Light, where final blows with the weapon grant stacks of Gathering Light, improving guard stats and lunge range. But you can additionally get Sacred Flame, where powered heavy attacks mark nearby targets, causing them to explode on death, as well as the Perfect Fifth, where every 5 hits attach a delayed solar explosive. And then there is Arc Conductor coming from Risk Runner, and powered heavy attacks charge the wielder, enabling them to resist arc damage and chain lightning to nearby targets. Then we've got Stormbringer, and rapid final blows create a lightning storm at the target location. Unplanned Reprieve, where powered heavy attacks emit projectiles that detonate with a Void Blast. And finally, Insectoid Robot Grenades, and final blows deploy homing robot grenades. So every time you get one of these swords dropped, whether it's from the exotic quest itself or inside of the Pale Heart content, as far as I know, you can get this to drop randomly from the Overthrow activity. But every time you get it, it will actually have a different exotic intrinsic built into it, and the elemental type of the weapon will change to fit that intrinsic. Plus, the actual basic frame of the weapon will be additionally adjusted as well. So it can be Vortex, Caster, Wave Sword frame, where heavy attack deploys a shockwave uppercut and launches the user into the air, and then lightweight and aggressive frame. So yeah, it's actually a randomly rolled exotic. The Transcendent bonus is always present, but those other traits have the potential to change, which is absolutely wild. So once you've picked it up for the first time, additional drops of it, which I'm assuming will come from various bits of Pale Heart content, are going to have different perks built into them, which is pretty awesome. If you do want a more in-depth look at how the weapon operates, my friend Duddits has a video, so I'll link that below. It's a very, very cool weapon, and it absolutely is designed to work with the new Transcendent Supers. But for the guide, and in terms of how you actually get the weapon, when you finish the Final Shape campaign, and we head back to the old tower area, I swear it does have a different name, but you know the one I'm talking about, and when you speak to Ghost, you'll get your post-campaign rewards, like the legendary campaign loot if you did that, and after that, you'll get a quest called Destined Heroes. The first step of this quest is very simple. We simply have to listen to another radio message, much like we do throughout the Final Shape campaign. And the next step requires us to investigate the activity of Savathun's Lucent Hive near the portal, and this is a mission called Queens Part 1. Now this mission can actually be initiated from the Lost City zone, so if you look at the map you can track the quest, it'll have the exotic engram icon on it, and from there you can simply start the adventure from the Lost Tower. And this first mission will take us through different areas of the Lost City. It's all very self-explanatory really. The only mechanics that are involved is that Hive sword bearers will drop swords. And there's a pretty neat mechanic where we actually have to reflect damage by guarding with those swords at some of the Hive runes that we can see around the place. And these runes will have different elements. So if it's a void rune, you'll need to reflect damage from a shrieker, for example. And so we move throughout various different spaces inside of this mission. Again, it's all kind of waypointed and fairly self-explanatory, but there is the sword mechanic mechanic. And there'll also be parts of the mission where you have to use the heavy ranged attack on the Crota sword to take down these green shields that are over runes. And finally, a third mechanic that you'll encounter where we simply have to pick up elemental cores from hive statues and actually throw them at the runes themselves. So those are the 3 important mechanics to understand to actually complete this first part. From there, simply go ahead and finish Queen's 1, and then we'll get a request to speak to Cade 6 in the Lost City. And again, if you're tracking the quest, it makes life much easier. At this point, we actually get the wildcard exotic quest, which is the one that drops the Still Hunt sniper rifle. That's actually a less involved exotic quest than the Ergo Some one is, so you basically pick it up along the way, and we can complete that one later on. After speaking to Cade though, we need to return to the Ghost, and Ghost will request that we complete 2 legendary quests that are actually in the inventory, and this is Found in the Dark as well as Lost in the Light. So you'll have to pick up both of those legendary quests, and we can see the requirement is actually listed on the exotic quest. And to find the locations for those quests, it's essentially a mission space, but you'll notice in the landing area of the Pale Heart map, up and to the right hand side, there is the Lost in Light campaign mission. So again, if you track that and then fast travel to the landing, that will lead you into the cave where refraction can be initiated for this mission. These will also actually reward us with various different prismatic upgrades, so fragments and some of the light grenades. So along the way, we'll actually be making progress on unlocking prismatic in more detail. Again, Lost in the Light, the mission itself is actually fairly self-explanatory, and we'll have to utilize some of the light and dark moat mechanics that we already experienced again inside of the Final Shape campaign. So there's nothing especially groundbreaking or unexpected there. So simply work your way all the way through the Hollow mission, and then there'll be a second part for the Lost in the Light quest, which is the Hollow Part 2, that actually requires us to head to Europa. That mission can be initiated from the cave where we conclude the first part, and in the Europa mission there's a cool mechanic where the Fallen actually help us out to fight off a bunch of enemies, and we'll have some friendly shanks that will actually approach certain doors, and we can then destroy them in order to blow the doors up. So that's another neat mechanic for those missions. From there, simply run through the Hollow Part 2, and that will conclude the Lost in the Light quest. But of course, the other quest is Found in the Dark, and to find that one, if you look at the blooming area on the Pale Heart map and then look down and to the right hand side, you'll see another one of these Final Shape quest icons, and you can track Found in the Dark from there, and by fast traveling to the blooming, we'll be able to very easily get to the next area that we need to for the quest. And for this second quest, we'll be fighting a bunch of Shadow Legion. Again, it's a fairly well waypointed quest, so the only mechanics to really know about include that we have to take antenna from certain scions and place them into some of the Cabal engine objectives. And other parts of the mission require us to kill high value targets. And these will drop unstable power units, which in the second part of the mission need to actually be thrown at the generators instead. Otherwise, it just takes a bit of time to actually complete these couple of additional legendary quests. Once both of those have been done though, Step 7 of the exotic quest is to complete Queen's Part 2, and this is a mission that can be activated from the Lost City area once again, and you'll see it marked by the exotic quest icon, so pretty easy to track that one. And again, this particular exotic mission is fairly self-explanatory. They may be slightly challenging if you're playing solo, but I certainly found them fairly engaging overall. And once Queen's Part 2 is completed, we'll be summoned back to the Lost City area once again to speak with Ghost, and they'll give us an item called a Dyadic Prism, and we'll be able to use that to access a new landing zone in the Sacrarium area of the Pale Heart. And when you look at the map, this is all the way on the right hand side. Again, there will be an exotic quest icon there, so I would track that to make life easier. And you can go ahead, fast travel to that zone and to the subsequent location where there's some cool additional story dialogue. And ultimately, that is where we will be given the Ergo Some exotic sword. So pretty cool exotic quest line. I get the feeling this is probably one of the longer exotic quest lines in this expansion, but it's certainly worth doing, especially if you like swords and you like Transcendence. Those two are going to be really good friends with each other. So there we go, guys. Also, the servers seem to have calmed down a bit from since last night. If you're wondering how we got the campaign completed and then subsequently have started exotic quests, it was one hell of a grind that required a lot of patience loading back into missions after being error coded and stuff. But the servers did eventually calm down, probably when a lot of players gave up and went to bed. And nonetheless, there we go. First exotic quest for the Final Shape. Don't forget the fact that we pick up the wildcard exotic quest on the way, and that awards the Still Hunt sniper. I think that one actually consists of just a couple of steps, basically an exotic mission. I haven't done it yet, but it doesn't look like it is as long-winded as the Ergo Some quest is. So keep that in mind. For today though, I hope the video has been useful. Let us know your thoughts on Final Shape or the exotic sword if you've picked it up. If you have found the video helpful though, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. And also, feel free to get subscribed so I can keep you posted with more Destiny content. But otherwise, I hope you guys have an awesome day.